Okay. Should we begin? You sure? Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Continuing part 2 of part 1, because we didn't finish yesterday. The subject matter, little refresher of what we covered previously, and the theme of this whole presentation, I call this respect. And the reason for calling it respect is according to the two acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami, who both comment on this whole section. They explain that Lord Kapila Dev is teaching to his mother Devahuti the forces that have the power to block the power of bhakti. Going forward, instead of just review, there commonly we hear there are 6 enemies of a conditioned soul: Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Those 6 are enemies of the conditioned soul, and they're enemies that are within. And of the 6, one of them is most difficult, meaning the other 5 have a place in service to Krishna. But the one that doesn't have any place in service to Krishna is envy. And so Kapila Dev is describing how this envy blocks bhakti. And people may practice bhakti, or he uses the phrase, worship the deity, but they're missing something very fundamental about bhakti, and that is that super soul is situated, the Lord that they're worshiping in the deity form, his expansion is situated in the heart of every living being. And there are 4 different stages of not respecting, which means disrespect, failure to respect other living entities, meaning failure to respect supersoul situated within those other living entities. And that blocks bhakti, or it's pretentious bhakti, or practice only bhakti, but not the real thing, not what real bhakti is. Because he gave a nice definition of what real bhakti is, which is quite similar to Rupa Goswami's definition of what real bhakti is. So we're going through, we ended going through the 4 list of the 4 and then detailing them. So who remembers what the first of the 4 in Sanskrit? Avagya. Avagya. So gya means to know, and ava means down, looking down upon others. Having a haughty attitude. I'm number 1. and anyone else is less than number one. So I look down upon them, as opposed to the opposite. You look up to those who are elevated. So the absence of humility, this haughtiness and pridefulness, thinking oneself above others, is the first. He and our acharyas, particularly Jiva and Vishwanath, identify it's the easiest position of the four to curb that problem of envy, just by respect, instead of it's the opposite of disrespect is to respect. And then how is that going to manifest? So this is the topic of this whole chapter. So following, looking down upon others is, he explains, or the acharyas explain, if one is in this avagya position, I can still be with others, I just look down upon them. But the upeksha is I avoid them. I turn my back to them. Although they may be whatever they may be, so that it doesn't negate if someone is cruel, harsh, offensive, and hurtful personality. You may keep a respectful distance. That's one thing, but avoiding is another. Here's the Sanskrit of the verse. One who worships the deity of Godhead in the temples, but does not know that the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is situated in every living entity's heart, must be in ignorance, and is compared to one who offers oblations into ashes. So the principle of fire yajna is the flame is Agni, and Agni serves as the tongue of Vishnu, and oblations are offered to the fire or the tongue of Vishnu, and it's making offerings to the Supreme Lord through the medium of the fire. Vishnu is being worshipped with mantras and pouring of ghee. So if the fire goes out and all that's left is cold ashes, and one pours ladles full of ghee on the ashes, that's how this person, who is the upeksha individual. So according to Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath, this is the second stage of the same disease of disrespect or failure to respect. Upeksha means, due to stronger envy, one wants to avoid the person one is envious of. When there's a little haughtiness, one doesn't mind associating despite harboring envy. But now, just seeing the other person, one feels some unpleasant feelings. One consciously justifies the other as bad. So the disease just ramped up a little bit. And it's not if someone has done something wrong to just close your eyes and don't see the wrong, but see the Lord is in the heart of that person who's doing something that may be not right. Vishwanath and Jiva use this term hitva, which we find this word hitva elsewhere. Even if there is one person or a devotee toward whom we harbor such an attitude, the result is like offering into ashes, no result. This is just commentary. We keep a safe distance from some ferocious animal. Keeping a safe distance isn't the problem. Disrespecting is the problem. Many people leave devotional service at this stage because they feel there's no progress. No, it's certainly a problem. Here's another illustration. Up on above, there's a heart, and it looks like a stormy heart. animosity, resentment, etc., etc. The get back mentality. They did this to me, or something like that. And so I feel ill will towards this person, upeksha, and I avoid them because because of envy. Again, this envy is the absence of seeing with respect the Lord in the heart of another. So the covering is the covering, and the soul is the soul, that they're not the same. And if I can't see the soul, I'm certainly not going to see the Supreme Soul. And if I can see the Supreme Soul, then respect goes to the Supreme Soul. Not necessarily to the behavior or speech, but to the Supreme Soul. This goes not just for people, but all living entities. Then here's a more acute stage, active hatred or envy. Dvishata, there's the right in the very beginning. One who offers me respect, but is envious of the bodies of others, and is therefore a separatist, you see in the second line, Bina Darshanaha. Remember we saw that chart towards the beginning of the chart, beginning of this presentation. Bina Darshanaha, seeing separately. A separatist, that's how Prabhupada has translated it. Never attained peace of mind because of his inimical behavior towards other living entities. Na mana shantim richati. They're always agitated, such persons. So here's some conventional people besides the Bhagavatam. We cannot pray in love and live in hate and still think we are worshiping God. They're saying the same thing just in their own language. Dvishata. I desire something bad to happen to this other person. Sometimes he even prays, my dear Lord, let him understand that he's not a devotee. Show him that he can't do this to me. The get back mentality. So I don't know if you ever experienced like this, but at times this has happened. One famous preacher in one part of the world was fond of displaying his preaching prowess. When there's a court case about ISKCON in his country, this person said on the internet that Krishna is punishing them because of their offense to him. He was wishing ill. Let them be punished. Let them suffer. Active hatred, dvishata. And then, remember what the last one was? The fault-finding one. So specifically, it's stated in the verse, he cannot, will not achieve peace. They're always agitated personalities that are like this. Supposing something bad happens, or something harsh is spoken, and you sit down to chant japa, where does the mind go? That's a symptom of this characteristic. It's very difficult to control the mind. And there's remedy. That this is one part of this presentation is Kapila Dev and our acharyas are outlining the stages of this envy, then what to do. There's the why and what to do. Why is it that I'm chanting? I mentioned this earlier, so I'll repeat it. After many, many years of having japa retreats, a question came. And so there was a little seminar just on the topic of, I'm still reading, I'm still chanting, but I don't feel I'm making much progress. Why? No, it's not, there's a silver bullet and this answers everything, but that's one thing to look at. What is it that's blocking the power of bhakti? And that's exactly what Kapila Deva's teaching, and of course it's completely consistent with Kapila Deva's teaching is bhakti. And those who teach bhakti teach there's something that's offense blocks bhakti, and it's a primary offense is failure to respect. No, failure to respect another entity or some expansion or manifestation of Krishna in this world, whatever that might be, and being disrespectful is being disrespectful to the source of that something. Again, we don't have to appreciate the behavior or the harsh speech, and it happens. Sometimes it's incidental, and sometimes it's consistent, and sometimes, and we're not advised to turn our discerning faculty off. The intelligence gets switched to the off position. You can't see what's what. You see what's what, but behind the what's what, there's the soul, and there's the supreme soul. And in a state of let's go to the topmost stages of bhakti. One doesn't see those kinds of distinctions. The discerning capacity is there. The discerning capacity doesn't get switched off. But the spiritual principle that's behind the behavior and speech and the modes of nature and everything else is not switched off. It's fully switched on. So it's not covered. Krishna consciousness is not covered by guna and karma for such an elevated person. So what's being spoken about here is what bhakti is. We'll go back to the definition of what bhakti is pure. There's bhakti that mixed has different names. Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Karma Mishra Bhakti. Going forward, we'll touch on all of these. But then there's bhakti that's not mixed. So that's the starting point by definition, what bhakti is. It's pure. And then there's mix. And particularly when the mix is envy, it's no longer bhakti proper. Not just mixed bhakti, it's not bhakti proper. Someone who for example, someone that is worshiping the deity and offends a Vaishnava, or regularly offends a Vaishnava, an offensive person. Such a thing exists, yes. So is what they're doing bhakti or not? According to Kapila, it's pretense. And because to the degree that it continues, the offense, because once again, the failure to respect is disrespect, and the disrespect is an offense. So what's our situation? Because who sees Super Soul everywhere? Maybe there's somebody in the room that does, but I doubt it. So then that it comes into the what to do, how to overcome. Where does it arise from? It arises from misplaced free will, and then therefore consciousness that becomes covered. And one of the coverings are these six. The most pernicious one is envy, and it blocks the power of bhakti. So I'm taking the medicine, but I'm also taking that reduces the effectiveness of the medicine. We're using the phrase of Vishwanath. It weakens the antidote to the disease. So what to do? That's next. Well, let's finish what the problem is. Then here comes the fourth and worst, and that's amanina or ninda. vilification or criticism. My dear mother, even if he worships me, and again, I like this because he's talking to his mother as Vishnu, and she's looking at her son as Vishnu. When he worships me with proper rituals and paraphernalia, a person who is ignorant of my presence in all living entities never pleases me by the worship of my deity in the temple. So if the goal is to please Krishna and this never pleases him, then it's in a very serious position. The proper, using his words, proper paraphernalia and proper rituals, everything, that's all, fine. But while ignoring my presence within all living entities, so it's not just, Vaishnavas. There's Vaishnava Aparad, and then there's Jiva Aparad. This nice language that's used about offenses against another living entity, but here it's other living entities, and it's pretty much pervasive. And that person is never pleasing to me, according to what Kapila Deva is seeing. Amanina, avamanina. One manifests one's hatred in a visible way by blaspheming the devotee. One actually starts saying everything one feels about this devotee, at the same time feels that they're right. People will say, "What's wrong? I'm just speaking the truth, man." Blah, blah, blah. What's wrong? It's called the mad elephant offense. We all know this from our Prabhupada's teachings. When you're growing a garden and you invite a wild elephant into your garden, the garden's smashed. The elephant's not to blame. He's just an elephant, big, heavy elephant. So that the image is the creeper of bhakti in the front, that golden-hued entity, and here comes the elephant to squash the creeper of bhakti. Here's a reference from a later chapter in the Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 23. Sharp arrows which pierce one's chest and reach the heart do not cause as much suffering as the arrows of harsh, insulting words spoken by materialists that become lodged within the heart. Arrows of insulting words is much more powerful than arrows. The devotee that we hurt will feel pain for so long, and Krishna is naturally not pleased. So there's some nice examples. So to help get us clear what's being spoken. Krishna's regarding the vilifier person. A person who is ignorant of my presence in all living entities never pleases me by worship of the deities in the temple. One will not feel Krishna's presence. Krishna turns his face away. We all have envy in our heart one way or another, but we should never allow ourselves to justify our feelings. A standard question or category of question that I'm asked is, how do I tell the difference between, where's the line between, the spiritual and material, or what's to be done, what's not to be done, or if I do this, is it on the spiritual or is it on the material side? Elaborations on the theme. And a very simple answer, who's at the center? Is the pleasure of Krishna at the center? And then it's favorable. And if I'm at the center, it's not favorable. It's going to be distorted at least, or worse. So we're going on to solutions. Here's the 4. We'll go through them again. Avagya, looking down. Upeksha, avoiding. Dvesha, active hatred or envy. Avamanina, or ninda, criticizing others. So they're in stages. In the first, there is a behavior that looks like, but it isn't, worship. So then it's a performance, but the substance is missing. And where you're pouring ghee into ashes, no change, no result. Disturbing, loss of inner peace. Others are disturbed. We're disturbed. Everyone is disturbed by this aggressive disrespect to others. And our own protection is being lost, because when we vilify others, Krishna is very, very displeased with us or that person who does like this. So here's the cure. We just finished part 1. And here's part 2. Therefore, through charitable gifts and attention, there's 2 words, dana and mana. See the second line? Gifts and friendly behavior. Viewing all to be alike, one should propitiate me who abide in all creatures as their very self. So it's a Vaishnava behavior, and it's partly a cure to these 4 categories, or the principle of envy is to honor others, honor those who are superior, and make gifts to those who are not superior, but you give something out of the kindness of your heart, because it's purifying to do so. And Prabhupada's purport to this verse: it should not be misunderstood that because the Supersoul is dwelling within the heart of a living entity, the individual soul has become equal to him. The equality of the Supersoul and the individual soul is misconceived by the impersonalist. Here, it is distinctly mentioned that the individual soul should be recognized in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The method of worshiping the individual soul is described here as either giving charitable gifts, so those who are in a lesser position, you be charitable and give gifts to them, or behaving in a friendly manner, free from any separatist outlook. Remember the Bina Darshanaha, or Bina Drik. So seeing those others in relation to the source of us, them and me, and all things, seeing the source within, and being respectful because of that, not separate from the Supreme. The goal, like an objective or the mature stage, is the advanced position. The advanced position is to see Krishna everywhere, because he is. But we don't see that. And how to see that? What's the cure? Mana and dana. We'll hear these phrases several times. The impersonalist sometimes accepts a pure individual soul as being Dhrita Narayan, meaning Narayan has become poor. This is a contradiction. The personality of Godhead is full of all opulence. He can agree to live with a poor soul, or even with an animal, that does not make him poor. So, mana and dana, we're going to spend some time on these 2 terms. Mana. Mana is the regard for someone as a superior. And dana, the giving of charitable gifts, is compassion towards one who may be in an inferior position. Now, we heard a whole bunch about avagya as looking down, seeing oneself as superior, and others are as inferior in general. However, with social orders, the varnashram system, the Madhyama Adhikari is enjoined by scripture to see differences. The one who is in the topmost position doesn't see differences. You see everybody and everything is being engaged in Christian service. Favorably, unfavorably, in this way, that way. But everyone is engaged in, they see on the spiritual platform. And those that aren't yet on the spiritual platform, they're in the Kanishta, they're in the Madhyama stage. They're recommended to use your intellect in discerning differences and respect according to those differences. The four positions, of occupation and ashram. Now, in social position, one may be in a less fortunate circumstance. This is true by karma, by guna and karma. One may be in a less fortunate position, and whatever. Just like age differences, there's some older persons in the room. There's some middle stage persons in the room, and there's some young persons in the room. So the younger person in the room is a younger person. We don't deny the body age is different. So in such a case, be charitable to the lesser in age, and those that are elder, be respectful in a formal way. Treat in a formal way. Do make not just cosmetic gestures, but cultured people do these things it quite naturally. So it's not that the less fortunate person is dependent upon our charitable gifts. They're not. They're dependent on Krishna. But we can act as agents of Krishna and distribute that which Krishna has given us to those that may have less than we have. Like preaching is, in one sense, preaching is like that. But the higher stage of preaching is just expanding the glories of the Supreme Lord, period. Not seeing anyone who's not eligible or anyone who's more eligible, or having your partiality towards who are candidates for receiving bhakti. When we give charity, it is to a person who is inferior in his material or economic condition. Charity is not given to a rich man. This is Prabhupada's purport to this verse. Similarly, it is explicitly stated here that mana, respect, is offered to a superior, and charity is offered to an inferior. The living entities, according to different results of fruit of activities, may become rich or poor, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unchangeable. He is always full. This is Prabhupada's commentary to this. Here is continuing. Treating living entity equally does not mean treating him as one would treat the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Compassion and friendliness do not necessitate falsely elevating someone to the exalted position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should not, at the same time, misunderstand that the Supersoul, situated in the heart of an animal like a hog, and the Supersoul situated in the heart of a learned Brahmana are different. The Supersoul of all living entities is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his omnipotency, he can live anywhere. And he can create this Vaikuntha situation everywhere. That is his inconceivable potency. Therefore, when Narayana is living in the heart of a hog, he does not become Hog Narayana. is always Narayana and is unaffected by the body of the hog. So now other acharyas besides Prabhupada, what they have to say. Bhaktivinoda has a lot to say on this. And one of the things that he said, I touched on it already, but we'll go a little bit further. These 6 enemies, envy is the most dangerous one. Here's his teaching. Why? Because it's completely opposite to love. So bhakti, of course, is service, but with a certain feeling of love. As long as there's envy, one cannot develop love for Krishna. Incompatible. We want to love Krishna, and Krishna happens to be everywhere and in everything. Therefore, loving Krishna and hating anyone or anything else is totally contradictory. So here's a conventional person speaking. Rajneesh, drop envy and jealousy, otherwise there is no possibility, because love cannot exist where envy and jealousies exist. So this is very broad in general. It's not personal, as bhakti is personal. But anyway, that's Rajneesh's idea. This disease of envy plunges us into the ocean of material existence. To obtain love of God, one has to get rid of this disease of envy. So it's best to start when it's just in the slightest form. That is the haughtiness or thinking of oneself superior to others in any way. Therefore, a Vaishnava has a natural, true Vaishnava has a natural capacity of humility in any situation. We heard these examples, the Braja story of the Brahmana who came to Vrindavan and met a sadhu and etc. Find someone inferior to you. He couldn't find one in Vrindavan. Therefore, in the Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated, Paramo nirmatsaranam satam. One has to become free of this nirmatsara completely. Because to understand Srimad Bhagavatam means to understand and love Krishna. So there's an eligibility. That's becoming free from envy. There are different ways of illustrating this. Here's a nice little graphic. There's roots, and then there's the leaves and branches of a tree. And these raga, dvesha, abhinivesh, and asmita, they're all rooted in ignorance, avidya. Devotional service is naturally powerful, but there's a blocking force, which is also very powerful. So anartha. So this is like a little Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because disrespect is an offense. An offense gives rise to anarthas, and the original anartha is ignorance. That's his analysis. And then he goes into different categories of anarthas in detail. And there are these 4 categories of anarthas. Tattva vibrama. And then there's categories, subcategories of tattva. Not understanding who we are. Not understanding who the Supreme is. This begins with misunderstanding the Lord's basic quality. That quality is reflected in his name, Vishnu. He enters everywhere. This is the theme of this whole section, starting from the very beginning of what Kapila Deva is teaching his mother. One who is worshiping the deity, but not seeing the expansion of the deity in the heart of other living entities, then that's pretense, because he's everywhere. So he's Vishnu, he's everywhere. You're worshiping Vishnu, but not recognizing Vishnu. Something's wrong. Fundamentally wrong. And if we don't realize this, we remain in ignorance. Paratattva, Svatattva, and these are tattva vibrama or vibrama, delusions or intense illusion about truths. Sadhana tattva, one does not understand what sadhana is. Spiritual practice is derived from understanding the nature of the soul and God, or sambandha gyan. So if one doesn't have sambandha gyan and you try to do sadhana, it's going to be messy. Therefore, some sadhana principles have to be taught. Sambandha gyan is an essential starting point of what's what, so you can do your sadhana properly. And sadhya, what's the goal? Another big one. So these are Bhaktivinoda Thakur's way of analyzing potential offenses that arise from avidya. In Tattva Vibrama, here's a nice example from Madhvacharya's writings. God is this is a detail. It's for those of you that don't like details, you can tune out for a bit, because the distinction between nimitta and upadan karanas, nimitta maya, upadan maya, or nimitta karana, upadan karana. There was supposed to be, I don't think I did this. I prepared a little document that elaborates from Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is discussed, at length, these terminologies. And most of us in the room probably not so familiar with this terminology. So those of you that are not, my apology, I should have sent out this little document. I'll do it. Jai Satchinanda send me a little reminder to send this document. Whoops. Here we go. I'll just read. We say is something different than what Madhvacharya says, or the Lord Chaitanya and his teachings say differently than what Madhvacharya says. And we say God is both the nimitta and upadan karana, deficient in material cause. Madhvacharya says that God is only the nimitta, according to him. Matter, there's his two fingers in the air, means there's a difference between this and that. Be a little familiar with Madhvacharya's teachings. His teachings are in one way, these two in 5 different orders. There's differences between this and that. There's difference between God and the living entity. There's difference between God and matter. There's difference between one living entity and another living entity. There's difference between categories of matter and other categories of matter. So it's this Panchabheda is a fundamental part of his teaching. So he's making this distinction that matter is different from God. We don't say, we say different, non-different. Lord Chaitanya's teaching is achintya abheda veda tattva. So there's a consequence. I'm different from the Lord is different from matter, and everything is all different from the Lord. And then so it leads to, it can lead to, it often leads to contention, dissension. So we, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, understand that proper sadhana leads to the goal, perfection. Supposing you're a Madhva follower. There's Madhva followers who are now taking part in ISKCON. But a Madhva follower strictly, just like Baladev Vijayabhushan. Remember we heard this little biography? He started as a Madhva follower. He lived in their ashram and then moved to Puri and lived in the ashram in Puri. He was well acquainted with Madhva's teachings. of course, something happened when he was in Puri. He also encountered followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very elevated Vaishnavas, and heard from them, and heard, the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And there was a shift, and this is one of those shifts. Seeing the oneness and difference simultaneously shift, as opposed to difference only. We have to understand that sadhana and sadhya properly. Goal of a madhva is not prema, but moksha, because of this slightly different understanding. So his is not, Madhva's teachings is not an intimate loving exchange with Krishna and Goloka. The goal of Madhva is attain Vaikuntha and be situated in the Vaikuntha realm with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're different. He's different. That's okay. And that difference, and the difference between him and Prakriti, is also very important. Because we don't belong to Prakriti, we belong to that spiritual realm. So let's go to the spiritual realm. And therefore, the teachings, it's subtle. Madhavendra Puri was also a previous acharya in our line, and he was also initiated in a follower of Madhvacharya, and he inaugurated a practice of a kind of love that's not found in Madhvacharya's teachings. The kind of love that's the intimate love of Radha in relation to Krishna, the love and separation. It's a certain kind of love. It's found in Vrindavan and found in Goloka. And he cultivated it. And he taught it. He passed it on to his followers, Ishwar Puri and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, etc. At least in terms of just looking at the picture of our disciplic succession. So there's a kind of love that's found in Lord Chaitanya and Lord Chaitanya's teachings that's not found in the love that's taught by Madhvacharya. Opulence of Bhagavan and the tininess of the living entity, that's fine. There's the distinction between the two. And it stops there. So then it has philosophically that the Supreme Lord is not connected to Prakriti in the material creation as it is seen by the followers of Lord Chaitanya. There's a oneness and difference simultaneously in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. It's subtle. He, Bhaktivinoda, after looking at the Madhva teachings, looks at the Sri Vaishnava teachings. And our Sri Vaishnavas can take a look at this, or those that have experience. Here's, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there's the intrinsic identity of a living entity, intrinsic identity of the Supreme. There's the Swarup, or Purushartha, as far as the goal is concerned. There's a way of identifying the goal, and there are Virodhi Swarup, those things that obstruct the goal. Not understanding or mistaken understanding of what is contrary to devotional service is the problem. It's very important to understand what it is and what it isn't. Keeping it simple. A good definition, this is a nice teaching. A good definition is both inclusive and exclusive. To say what something is, you also need to say, to a good definition, it's not. So, like the living entity, Aham Brahmasmi, but we're not the Supreme. Parabrahman, we're not the Parabrahman, we're the part. But you don't say both the inclusive and exclusive, it's an incomplete definition. very important to understand what is the offense that blocks our devotional service and what's the nature of aparat. Basically, what is the nature of something that is contrary to devotional service? This arises from ignorance, or asat, trishna. So the asat, trishna means thirst. So one develops a thirst for asat if one doesn't have a proper understanding of what sat is. If we don't have a proper understanding of what Krishna is, then chances are we're going to have desire for the temporary, not making proper distinctions. So philosophy is philosophy. It's not super juicy, but it's necessary to have a proper foundation in Sambandha Gyan to get the right teachings. Now here's something further. I hope you don't mind philosophy, because that's what's coming. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur explaining what's the avidya, or ignorance, that's behind offense. Offense is the roots of the tree build the tree. So the root of offense, which is the tree, it has this ignorance as its root. Asat Trishna. Desire for something material, that which is not of the source, that was like, matter and spirit, that which is not of the realm of spirit, and having a thirst for that which is not who we are. We're of the realm of spirit. Asat Trishna. If we don't understand who we are, what is reality, then naturally desire for something unreal will take its place for the real. Material enjoyment, heavenly enjoyment, liberation, mystic powers, and all varieties. These are impediments to reach the goal. Avidya is the root, the asat trishna, and then comes aparad. Those first two were the root structure of the aparad. Because we developed this trishna, insatiable thirst for material enjoyment, we developed certain philosophies and practices. And this is the consequence, is aparad. So this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's analysis of this topic. You can see his analysis goes far more in detail and subtleties and nomenclatures and things. If it's too much for anybody in the room, don't worry about it. The fundamental thing is have proper regard for the living entity, because the super soul is within that living entity. Even we may not see it or see him, but one who has the proper understanding, however they got that proper understanding, they're respectful and never disrespectful. It's a nice principle to live by. Always be respectful, never be disrespectful. Even if someone does something wrong or harsh or hurtful, and they do it again and again and again, you may not like that behavior or speech, but never become disrespectful towards the person. And there's different ways of processing that. Means super soul is within their heart and sanctioning their harsh speech and misconduct. So why are they doing that? In many cases, this is contemporary, but it's true. In many cases, a perpetrator of harshness has personally been the victim of harshness, and it hurts. So the victim now becomes the perpetrator. I know somebody that does this professionally, and when there's a certain behavior that is in a pattern, a very standard thing to do for such a person is to look at in their upbringing, this life, what to speak of previous lives, and What was it that triggered this kind of behavior or erratic conduct? Something, that there was a hurt inside, and now they're to cover that hurt that they're feeling inside, they're being hurtful in speech or behavior or both. So it's not doesn't make it nice or okay. It is what it is. Your discerning faculty goes on, but see beyond the external. And what's causing that? And so ultimately, Krishna is the cause of all causes. He's sanctioning. So the person is, in the modes of nature are moving. The mode of ignorance, it may be moving someone's speech and behavior. Where'd they get that motive? It's not them. The mode of ignorance is not them. Where'd they get that ignorance? From the source of everything. That's where everybody gets ignorance. Everybody gets anything. It's from the source of everything. So don't blame the manifestation that comes from the source of everything. So instead of going into that retaliation and blaming and fault finding and all this other stuff, what is it that I can do respectful towards the super soul that's within and the soul that's within this entity that's behaving harshly or wrongly, to help relieve them of that pain and relieve them of that misfortune? Is there something? You may not have an answer to the question, but if you ask the question, you're much better situated than if you don't ask yourself that question. In what way can I be of service to this person to relieve their ignorance? And there's a lot of ignorance. It's Kali Yuga. A lot of ignorance. There's a nice passage in Prabhupada's letters. One devotee named Rai Rama, he was the BTG, the editor of the Back to Godhead magazine. Prabhupada gave him the name Rai Rama Das. He was, a Brahminical type of person. So he asked Prabhupada, is it okay? This is a letter to him, to Prabhupada. Is it okay to use Back to Godhead magazine as an instrument for speaking out against animal slaughter? Because you can close your eyes and pretend that it doesn't exist, but if your eyes are open, it's all pervasive. You may not see the slaughterhouse. You may not see the chickens being killed. You may not see the this and the that's. But you see the eating places, and it's filled with that stuff. Where it doesn't exist, it's everywhere. And it's everywhere because people want it. They can't live without it. They're addicted. And it's cruelty. Fundamental. So Rai Ram is asking Prabhupada, is it okay to include some articles that speak against this behavior and the consequences of that behavior? And Prabhupada gave a long answer, dictated a long letter, basically saying, no, it's not the behavior, it's the consciousness behind the behavior. Essentially, that's what he said. A long description. Gave different ways of those who are participating in acts of violence. There's 7 in number. It's not just those who cook it and those that eat it. So if the whole chain breaks down if people are not participants in the chain. So, so what's the principle that should be spoken about is respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or to within the heart of that animal. You can't be disrespectful. You can't love God and be disrespectful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is in the heart of all living entities. Speak on that point. That was Prabhupada's essential reply. So it was a very long, elaborate letter reply. And it's a nice understanding. We're doing the philosophical part from Canto 3, Chapter 29. And, maybe it's a little like chewing sawdust or something. It's not lovely. But it's the principle behind that which material existence is made up of, which blocks the power of bhakti. The affinity towards this enemy within, the enemy is not over there, the enemy is within the heart. So that the Supreme Lord, like we heard this nice description of the chanting, the Lord dances in the courtyard of one's heart, and the mind becomes stunned, the senses become inert. We don't experience that, most of us. And why? Because the same problem, the not having the qualification to receive the holy name properly and chant the holy name properly and propagate the holy name in the best possible way. It doesn't require being an exhibitionist or someone who's wild or extreme. Prabhupada wasn't wild or extreme, but he was steeped in love of Godhead. And what he saw the reality and saw how people were suffering because of not being in touch with reality. Instead, these other 4 progressive stages. We'll read. Why do we make aparad? We want to enjoy, someone comes in our way, and we offend them. Of all people, devotees come in our way of enjoyment the most, because thirst for enjoyment, we develop an offensive attitude. When we understand that we are servants, this offensive attitude is completely against the spirit of enjoyment. 4 categories: Namaparad, Sevaparad, Vaishnavaparad, Jiva Aparad. Take your pick or combination. And again, it's rooted in ignorance. So what's the antidote for ignorance? It's knowledge. Light is the antidote for darkness. The darkness of ignorance is eradicated by light of transcendental knowledge, and not book knowledge, but transcendental knowledge. And here's the 4th of the 4. Hridaya Dorbalyam, weakness of heart. It's the grossest manifestation of anarthas. Anyone who's read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings knows this phrase. Hridaya Dorbalyam. Bala is strength, and Dorbalyam is weakness, the absence of strength. And the Hridaya, the heart, becomes weak. And it's within the seat of consciousness. It starts with a very subtle manifestation, and it becomes grosser and grosser and grosser. The most gross manifestation of weakness of the heart. Here's attachment to trifling things. Kutinati, deceitful behavior, fault-finding. Matsarya, envy, this is our topic. This seated in the heart of the 6, the most difficult one. Sva pratishtata, pride. So pride and envy are they have their brother and sister. They have the same mother. False ego. Identification with who we're not. And that's ignorance. You identify with who you're not. That's ignorance. And then here comes envy and pride. The grossest manifestation of ignorance is envy and pride. The result of this is suffering in this world. And is there suffering in this world? Too much. And do you want to do something about it? Get out the torchlight of transcendental knowledge and apply the torch light of transcendental knowledge. Now it starts within ourselves and how we engage properly and hearing. So this was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Now we're moving on to Jiva Goswami and his discussing this topic. Particularly in the series of verses describe the gradations of envy. He draws upon 2 verses from Agni Purana, and it's found in Bhakti Sandarbha. So you know the Shravan Kumar story. We've heard the Shravan Kumar story already. Here it is again. Dasarath had a mystic power, and mystic power that he had been bestowed with was he could fire arrows at a target without seeing the target and hit the target. And it was through sound. So one day he's in the forest hunting and he heard a sound. He thought that's an animal drinking water at a lake or a stream. So he shot the arrow. When he shot the arrow, he heard a human sound indicating that he had shot a human. So hearing that sound, he followed the sound and found Shravan Kumar. Not yet dead, but mortally wounded. And the son, Shravan Kumar, so his mother and father are Brahmanas. So he is the young boy as their son. And I've come to take care of my old blind parents. I was bringing them water. They depend upon me because I'm their eyes. And you hit me with this arrow. So please take care of my mother and father. And he died. So Dasarath picked him up, his dead body, went to the direction that his son indicated where they were, and he found the blind father. He placed the son on the lap of the blind father, and in great remorse explained what had just happened. This is from Ramayana. The father lamented and asked why such a fate had befallen him. He then spoke a curse. As I die from this separation from my son, you too will die in the same way. It's a Brahminical curse. And that's exactly what happened. So that's what's in Ramayana. Then Jiva Goswami points out, from Agni Purana, there's further explanation. The father, being a Brahmana, was thoughtful, and he began considering, what brought this misfortune to me? It's a lesson for us. What in the background back there, what did I do that has brought this misfortune to me? He wasn't blaming Dasarath, he was blaming his mistake in the past. Two possible reasons described in Bhakti Sandarbha. Shila Bhuti Krita Kim Va Parimayam Harer Maya. Perhaps I once saw the deity of the Lord and thought of it as stone, Shila Buddhi, considering it merely a well-decorated stone. This is a serious offense, as the Lord can manifest anywhere. Then that was one possibility. Maybe I offended a deity. Then he thought maybe I offended a Vaishnav. And the offense to the Vaishnav was just not respecting. The same avagya offense. Perhaps a Vaishnav once came before me, decorated by signs of Vishnu Bhakti, Tilak, Kuntimala, etc. At that moment, I did not pay obeisances in my mind and respect him properly. Maybe that's why this misfortune came to me. So, he was a curse to Dasarath, but he was accepting ownership of the cause, of why the cause came, because something in my past that brought about this misfortune. So back to the precept that goes, the earlier verses of this chapter. God appears in front of us in two forms, deity or devotee. No, in this offense, it's just not properly respecting devotees, properly respecting any living entity, and for that matter, anything, because within every atom, Supersoul is there. So that's a very high position. That's the Uttama Adhikari has that understanding or realization. What would it be like to see Super Soul everywhere? Phew. What would it be like to be an Uttama? You can close your eyes and imagine what it'd be like, but you won't come close. That's not how you can experience Uttama Adhikari position. Imagining. So God comes before us in two forms, as the devotee and as the deity. If someone is trying to serve God, that's the devotee. We should treat him on the same level as God. Through this Agni Purana reference, Jiva Goswami gives us a warning about how careful we should be and the consequences of not being properly careful. Here's another reference. This is Mahabharata reference. The pure person who does not disturb others, just as a father is compassionate to his son, quickly gains the mercy of the Lord. The Mahabharata verse. So the affection between father and son is quite natural. So Jiva Goswami is still taking this topic in his Sandarbhas and explaining it further. Compassion, like the father towards the son, feeding, this is this dana, giving in charity. So a father does this with the son. The mother does this with their child, the son or daughter. They feed them. And then that's the charity. Then there's your speech, your behavior and speech. You give gifts charitably, in principle, as a way of living. And don't be careful and well behaved in speech. Don't speak harshly, because it can be disruptive. And there's a consequence for speaking carelessly and disruptively. Besides, the other person feels the arrow pierced their heart, worse than just a regular arrow, as we already discussed. So that's the problem. Here he's presenting solutions. 4 verses, how devotional service is useless if one does not respect other living entities, only the deity. Here is now a remedy. We want a remedy. Thank you. Performing his prescribed duties, one should worship the deity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead until one realizes my presence in his heart and in the hearts of all other living entities as well. That's a long road. That's a lot of deity worship, or a lot of chanting, or a lot of reading scripture, or a lot of bhakti until that stage. So the pretentious stage continues until there's this acknowledgement or realization or acceptance of the fact that Super Soul is in the heart of everyone. So it's not just the Lord that I'm worshiping because I'm a bhakta, but other entities are to be respected, not because they're God, but to respect it because God is within, the presence of the personality of God. So this is how to see, please understand what's going on. It's Sambandha Gyan, how to understand. So we're sitting in our host and hostess's living room, and we're not seeing Super Soul, probably most of us. So this is training through Kapila Dev's teachings and the training of bhakti in general, of how to see the personality of Godhead and being properly, therefore, at least behavior-wise and speech-wise, properly respectful to one another, and, have the fruit come from that sadhana, the fruit of sadhya, that's feeling more the presence of the personality of Godhead than we were before that cultivation of bhakti. Ideally, that's a trajectory for spiritually elevated souls. Feeling and then speech and behavior that's conducive to that feeling, or exemplifies that feeling, demonstrates that feeling, that the personality of Godhead is here with us, and being in our speech and conduct respectful, appropriately respectful. Then comes, our social conditioning. Somebody says something or does something that irritates us. It happens all the time. And then what do you do? So then it depends. Modes of nature are going to tell you what you're going to do, because we're under the control of the grip of the modes of nature. That's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to feel. That's what you're going to say. That's and the consciousness perpetuates itself. Supposing you don't want to do that, is there an option? Yes. What that option look like? You want to please the personality of Godhead. That's bhakti by definition. So by definition, what am I supposed to do in a circumstance? Worship the deity and strive to be respectful, at least, to the fact that living entity, the Supreme Lord, is situated within every one of us. And accordingly, to one's social position, etc., we distinguish, we're madhyamas, we make distinctions between those that are the Supreme Lord, those that are more elevated, those that are peers, and those that are less advanced. We make distinctions. We're enjoined to make distinctions. So making distinctions is just fine. Leave your intelligence turned on. That's just fine. And be respectful in all circumstances, according to position. So there's the mana, the respecting those that are superior, making maitri, making friendship with those that are peers, and dana, being charitable to those that have less fortune than you have been bestowed with. And you take that which you receive and you give accordingly to that the position, and that's the life of bhakti, as opposed to material life that doesn't make those kinds of distinctions and gestures. This verse we just discussed, 25. We'll go back to 25. Oh, it's not this. It's 20. Okay. I'll see if I can find 25 specific. There's 25. Compassion like that of a father towards a son. Don't disturb others by careless speech. So these behaviors are general, and it specifically applies to japa. That is, be respectful that Krishna is within his holy name, and be present with Krishna as you're chanting japa, recognizing that he is being present with you. You're calling his name, and he's present in his name. Because we're calling his name. And to different degrees, we're going to realize or not realize Krishna is present in his name, and he's with us. And we're with him just by calling his name. So that's a sadhana that leads to sadhya. It's the same point. So here's back to Kapila Deva's providing us with a solution to the problem. That's our problem, inside problem. For 4 verses, Kapila said that there is no use of worshiping the deity without respecting others. Here, he tells us to worship the deity. Some people may think, I should stop deity worship because it's useless. Other people think of they can give up their duties when performing the worship of a deity. Devarshi bhutaptit nunam pitrinam. Kapila Deva's advice is do deity worship while doing your svakarma. In conjunction with performing the duties, one understands that he is in the heart of all living entities. It's, sadhana bhakti. continue with your sadhana and be mindful, cultivate by the process of hearing and association, etc. Cultivate the process of recognizing Krishna is within the heart of others, as he's there on your altar. You're making offerings and offering prayers and having arti and everything when on your altar at home or at the temple. And similarly, he is situated everywhere. And so the worship is to assist us to come to seeing him everywhere and feeling that his presence everywhere. And one should, the recommendation Kapila is making explicitly, continue your worship till that stage comes. When will that stage come? When we'll experience Krishna within our heart and Krishna within the heart of others, while, before, after, and during your worship of the deity. That's high. That's a very high stage of practice, of sadhana, to come closer to the stage of sadhya, the goal of sadhana. But it's good to bear in mind where you're going. I remember very clearly, once upon a time, I was a college kid, and I had a friend who had a little sports car. It was a convertible sports car. And every Saturday, it was very regulated, he got in his little sports car and went for a ride. And so one time, just out of curiosity, I asked him, where are you going when you get in your little sports car and go for a ride? He said, I'm just going for a ride. And I said, I hope you get there. He chuckled. But, what's the purpose of life? Row your boat gently down the stream. You know that little rhyme? Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. You've heard that one? There's no meaning. Just row your boat. What's the goal? There's no goal. So supposing your goal is, I want to, X, something on the material side. I want to become da-da-da-da-da-da. And I want to have da-da-da-da-da-da stuff by being da-da-da-da-da-da attainment. And, then you strive and struggle and, towards a material goal. Supposing you don't have a material goal, or you find that that's not satisfying, then you want liberation, frustration because the grapes are sour. Prabhupada tells that story. The jackal was jumping to get the grapes and he couldn't get the grapes. So then he started saying this rumor, the grapes are sour. So liberationists. So those are those aspirations. We saw that chart. Remember that chart? Liberation is one of them. It's I'm at the center and I want freedom from this bondage of material existence, please. And that's a bondage also, because I'm still at the center. It's not what real liberation is. Muktir hitvanyatas rupam, what is it? Muktir hitvanyata rupam svarupena vyavastati. So being situated in one's spiritual form, just like that, we couldn't hear it so well, but that nice prayer that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was offering, or poem that he was reciting. Emerging from the covering comes some identity of who we really are. And one can live in that consciousness, that's very exalted, but when you get in your car and you're going for a ride or you're living your life, what's the goal? It's a nice question. It's an essential question. Many of you know when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first met with Sanatana Goswami, these were his two questions. Who am I? Kayami. And why is it that I'm forced to suffer the threefold miseries of material existence? I don't want to suffer. Why do I have to suffer? It's a good question. We don't want to suffer. Why do I have to? And the goal is not just get on the other side of suffering, because we touched on this way at the beginning of this presentation. Priti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami writes in the very first verse of the whole Sandarbha, is people want happiness and diminishing mitigation of suffering. And it's not complete. It's not until only when Priti for the Supreme is manifest in one's heart does one feel real happiness and mitigation of suffering. That's where the train's going. That's where we want to go. Get your little sports car and go there. Put your hand in your bead bag and go there. You live your life knowing what the goal is. Cars these days, they have built-in GPS systems right on the dashboard. Supposing you don't enter the destination, many people just use their phone, but many cars just, it's on your screen in the front of the car. And you don't put the destination in. It tells you where you are, but it doesn't tell you how to get to where you're going to go because you didn't put in the destination. You put in the destination, then it'll tell you how to get there. Good GPS system will do that. Supposing there's a bridge is out, or there's a roadblock, they're doing construction. GPS doesn't read the construction; it just reads the direction. But once you get to the place where there's construction, it'll reroute you to get around the construction to where you want to go. Even when there's obstacles in your sadhana and your practice and your life, be very clear what the destination is. Where is this going? What is again Sanatana Goswami's question? What's the goal of life and the means to achieve it? No, that's Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's discussion. That's their discussion. The goal of life and the means to achieve it. Lord Chaitanya's teachings. That's Srimad Bhagavatam. It's also being covered here in Kapila Dev's teachings. The result of Vaidhi Bhakti is not just liberation, but one will see Krishna in the heart of all living entities. It's being repeated and repeated and repeated, but it's because it's so important. Bhakti is incomplete without this. Doesn't mean it's not bhakti, it's just incomplete. Until one sees the Supreme Lord situated in everyone's heart, one should do regulated devotional service. We really have to see the Lord. So now comes, a common understanding, the performance of duty. And we're going to end with this. This is Vedic culture, and Vedic culture includes respect. Then comes the question, to whom should we respect? Or who are worthy recipients of respect? So who is the senior? This is the mana. And there's gradations of the mana in terms of varnashram, in terms of age, in terms of wisdom, in terms of all kinds of things. We'll come to that later. Duty means we should follow Vedic culture and varnashram dharma. Respect parents, respect elders. Following the rules of varnashram will make us gentle human beings. We'll learn how to respect. Respect is a very important feature of Vedic culture. And it's not the essence of bhakti, but it's an essential component of bhakti. Or say it the other way, without respect, you don't have bhakti. You don't have a relationship. You have a mess. You have material life. So we follow those things and accept those things that are supportive of remembering Krishna, or be favorable to achieving loving relationship with Krishna, restoring a loving relationship with Krishna. And then their scriptures give us very clear indicators, not just hints and clues, very clear indicators of this is helpful, this is detrimental. And you accept the helpful and you avoid the detrimental, at least in principle, as much as one can. And in Vedic culture, I'm going to end with this because of time, but respecting elders. You know that the fellow's got white hair and a little beard, and he's an elder, and all the other persons around him, they're younger, so he's their elder. They're respecting him, according to their position, etc. I'm pausing because I'm just gonna tell one little story from Shrutakirti's what is his biography of serving with Prabhupada for so many years as his personal servant. The title of the book is "What is the Difficulty?" Because Prabhupada would say that again and again. What is the difficulty? So in that biography about his life with Srila Prabhupada, he describes a situation where he was visiting a certain temple, and when he came into the temple room, everybody in the temple room paid their obeisances. That's just standard protocol. When Prabhupada would come, everyone would pay their obeisances, and except one person. And one person stood with his palms folded like this, and that was his paying obeisances. So Prabhupada took a few steps and turned to Shrutakirti and said, "His fall down has begun." Just not wishing ill of the person, but just noting that the failure to properly respect is a disrespect, and that's an offense, and it's the beginning of all this avagya sequence. And then Shrutakirti says, within 2 weeks, that devotee left the Hare Krishna movement. You didn't give the name of the person. I have an idea who the person is, but association with sadhus, or those who are worthy of respect, elders, etc., is a great opportunity. Persons who are wise and being in the presence of those that are wise is a great opportunity. However, there's the chance of making an offense by not properly respecting. And there's consequences to not properly respecting. I remember very clearly, I was, during the period of time, I was a very new devotee. There was one devotee who I looked up to. He was quite enthusiastic. And it was a fashion in those days. So he was following a fashion in those days. He had a chain around his neck, or a string around his neck. And on the end of the string was a little bag. And the little bag was a little hand-carved Jagannath. It was a fashion. Devotees got little Jagannaths they carried around with them and placed them by their heart. So he was one of those. I won't say his name. And so he, being a person of strong character, Prabhupada engaged him at some point in time as being his personal secretary. This is before GBCs became his secretary. but he was his secretary for a while. And I remember very specifically looking up to this devotee because of this, the characteristics of an elevated devotee. You look up to such a person. And at the time of my initiation, his one of his services was Prabhupada would chant. He put our japa beads on his microphone stand, and then chant on our beads right in front of everybody. Chant japa on our beads, and then give us our name. So he chanted on my beads, and then he was giving me my name. So he turned to this devotee, who I'm not saying his name, and asked him what is on the sheet that Prabhupada gave him before we sat in the temple room. And he said, Romapada. And Prabhupada shook his head and said, no, Ramapada. And so this devotee, in a tone, like a sharp tone, said, it says here, Romapada. So Prabhupada, body language tilted back. And so your name is Romapada. That's how I got my name. And that devotee that was correcting his spiritual master fell. He had characteristics of a very strong personality, but offense has consequences. It's not imaginary. Krishna is not pleased by offense. And Krishna is not pleased. It's the opposite of what bhakti is. Displeasing. So we require sadhu sangha, association of sadhus. And when you have the opportunity to be in the association of sadhus, be very careful. Don't make offense. Don't regard, like this Shravan Kumar's father, don't regard the deity as Shila, as just stone. Or don't regard a Vaishnava as not properly respecting them. Then we see, we're fortunate. We have a lot of devotee association. Because we have abundant devotee association, be vigilant not to take casually or ordinary or, lightly. Don't let the principle of respect fade. Even if somebody does something goofy, then you need to consider, you leave your intelligence turned on, don't turn your intelligence off, and don't, look the other way, put your head in the sand. You can see what's what, but don't lose respect. And then what can I do from the position of, in the association of this person, to, be of service, to help them in whatever ways, I have the capacity. You may not have an answer, but let your consciousness go there instead of the other place the consciousness goes. Looking down, and these other three stages of the heart becomes blocked by something inside, the Matsarya principle, and it escalates. And then it can be very problematic. And according to what Kapila Dev is indicating, it may become very difficult to cure it in a more matured stage. So be vigilant. Don't be intimidated and all of that, but seek association. Be very careful in that association. Be knowing that I'm undoubtedly going to make some mistakes, and other people make the mistakes. I don't focus on their mistakes. What can I be? How can I? This is social interaction in the association of devotees. That's what our life is. The Hare Krishna movement. Welcome. How to be respectful in all circumstances without being critical. How to be a servant of all the devotees. according to my position, according to their position, our relationship, and so forth and so on. Okay. That's part 2. On Kapila Dev's teachings on explanation of devotional service, chapter 29 of Canto 3. And it goes on for several more parts. It's a nice discussion. It's very practical for us. Any comments or discussion? Yes.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for such a wonderful treatment of this very important and potentially misunderstood or topic, and making a lot of wonderful points from Shastra. Maharaj, from both from today's and yesterday's, I just want to understand better that all these discussions on respect or failure to offer respect at a fundamental level are more internal than external.
Yes. It starts, what's inside comes outside, though.
Yeah, true. So, like yesterday, an avagya, ignoring people or something, it's more, I mean, just to kind of paint a hypothetical, vivid picture, if there are a lot of people like in
just like today
at the temple, but it's, let's say it's not possible for one to acknowledge or recognize or even have eye contact with everyone. But if in the heart there's no specific emotion to ignore someone, that's what you meant by not by
no.
ignoring.
There's two. Please make a distinction between the first two. The looking down upon, or the avagya, is the first, and then but I'm still moving about with people that I'm looking down upon and not feeling uncomfortable being with those people. I'm better than other people, but I'm okay with being around people lesser. Then the dvesha is the next, and I want to avoid at least certain person or persons, and so that's what it sounds like what you've been describing, then that's a more acute stage of the first one.
I'm saying that if there's none of that in the heart, but externally, if you maybe you don't have the time or any specific,
that's different. Yeah, that's different.
But somebody else may feel that, oh, he doesn't talk to somebody, he carries a chip on his shoulder.
Well, okay, so some persons are talkative and some persons are more private and quiet. That just to have a different nature, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. So yes, it's something that's within the heart. But when that person that has something within their heart, they do speak or act, it'll be clear. That's a cultured person. They know how to speak and how to act. They may be reserved by their nature. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But when they do speak or act, it's clear what's inside. Mm-hmm. So it's what's inside that's the important, as opposed to emphasis on what's outside. Yes, I'm agreeing.
Thank you, Maharaj. May I?
Yeah.
Maybe a similar general theme, but this incident, I'm just picking on it because that was the last thing you shared about your name giving, just as an example. Of course, Srila Prabhupada is direct associate of the Lord, or we regard him at the highest level. But I think it was more like what you're noting is that the tone or the mood
Yes.
internally that came out
Yes.
was the problematic
It was sharp.
part. Because
It was a tone in his voice. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't a slap, but it was the next thing. You know, the tone was, it says here, you know, Prabhupada gave a name and he corrected, you know. I was shocked because this is the person I'm looking up to and he's speaking with this tone and this manner. And, you know, this man's got a problem. And sure enough. So it's not like the proof was that he fell, but that the offense is just that he did what he did. So familiarity breeds contempt. And he wasn't sufficiently protected. I mean, just embellish what I just said this way. One of the characteristics of the little bit of time I had in associating with Shruta Kirti is he was so humble. And things happened that could have flipped anybody else out. You know, Prabhupada chastised him, and you know, and his companion sannyasi that was with him, he was the servant, and the other was his secretary. And you know, Prabhupada was strong, and he respected what Prabhupada was doing. It was difficult for him. He met in many places. He said, I just looked at the ground, like I couldn't make eye contact. And he Prabhupada knew what he was doing. He was training him, and as the spiritual master, he would sometimes be very strong, like medicine, strong medicine. Feeling that I'm the physician and you're the patient and you need strong medicine, my dear patient. So here it is. And Shruti never deviated. He never became resentful. And he, you know, said it's like many times, wrote in this book many times, Prabhupada never asked me to leave. He asked Prabhupada more than once to leave, can I leave? Because of family affection, etc. And then he had a son, His wife was very happy. So it wasn't dissension in the family, but he was attached. And, you know, anyway, and Prabhupada never, he dealt with him in such a loving way, and it wasn't always with an embrace, is the point. And he knew it. Even when he was being chastised, he knew it. He felt it. I've had situations where, by circumstance, you know, it was clear that disciple X needed some scolding, and I could see that scolding didn't have a good result. The person nearly broke. So, you know, Super Soul indicated to me that this individual needs some scolding. And the response was, they can't handle it. Anyway, I understand this without the details, because that wouldn't be nice. But there's a loving relationship that exists between the personality of Godhead and his devotee. And one who's situated in devotional service, they can palpably appreciate the mercifulness of Krishna. One devotee right here in Portland was sharing with me that, you know, their experience of Krishna was being very kind with them when they didn't know lots of things, but Krishna, they understood that palpably how Krishna was kind. Krishna is kind. So, and it's not always a pat on the head, or sometimes it's handles me roughly in his embrace, or leaves me brokenhearted. You can be, so that's an elevated status, but that's a relationship, a loving relationship, when it's truly a loving relationship. So back to your main point, that what's inside is most important, and offense is when that inside is not what it should be. It becomes then that's in this offense category. Go ahead. You want to say something further?
No, I want to give a chance to others, but just end with this, that in that particular name-giving case, there's another example of Prabhupada where I think he was getting late, but then he chastised, oh, you should have told me, to one of his servant. So
Yeah.
basically saying, hey, kind of, I'm paraphrasing, like I'm a human, I can make mistake. You should correct me when you see, like, if I'm getting late or something like that. So, but if in that case, this devotee's tone would have, or his internal haughtiness would not be there, it was
Right.
more like a service to him that, but this page says something else, that whole thing would have turned the situation completely different, just to
Yes.
use that as an example.
Day and night difference.
Got it.
Okay. Others? Yes. You get the privilege of passing the microphone on to the next person. Okay.
Sometimes a devotee may naturally have playful or joking nature, so they may joke around with other devotees. So is that counted in a
No.
disrespect?
Yeah. It depends in the manner in which it is done, and as we just discussed, the heart. What is the internal? Is it playfulness that's appropriate? And then there can be playfulness that's not appropriate. And then it's, etc. So joking around is fun. It's a type of loving exchange, if that's what it is. Okay, you sure? You're thinking of something in particular, I can tell. Yeah.
But inside the mind, if he's disrespectful, then he should try to improve himself.
Yeah, yes, that's the internal, the intention. Now, it happens sometimes when the intention is not just in a playful way, but to take it little more extreme. I have had the experience, and if we've all probably had the experience, you go out of your way to do something that's intended to be a gesture of kindness to another person. And much to your surprise, you find out then or later they read it just the opposite. I better not say anything. Better not do anything. Better become a stone, because no, that's not the solution. It's just, one person not understanding another person. And that's social interaction. And then, there are different behaviors, or what you can do if that happens. Sometimes just let it go. And there's many options. Somebody who's the third party who that individual respects, help them understand. Have that person help them understand. Anyway, there's different behaviors, different options that you can select from a menu, and then there become consequences to have that misunderstood also. You're just covering your backside. All you're thinking about is yourself. You know, yeah. Wow.
Hey Krishna Maharaj, my question was that you said that mentioned that the story of Dasharath doing killing with the mantra without seeing. So that's said in two ways. Like the father first was thoughtful about what the misfortune was, and then but in Ramayana he cursed Dasharath. So they're two kind of different stories. So how is it possible to be two different stories?
One day you're going to become old, Krishna permitting. And one of the things that happens when you get old is your memory goes and your hearing goes. And I'm in both categories. So could you tell me what she said? Shravan Kumar's father. He's a Brahmin, right? There's a cause behind something. Yeah. No. What? Yeah. What? Yeah, his curse was out of anger. Yes. And then the thoughtfulness is not out of anger, but it's his Brahminical nature. I have an understanding that if misfortune comes because of something back there, karmically, I must have done, or by offense, I must have done something that has brought this misfortune. So by thoughtfulness, he was able to think. And yes, that the moment of his cursing wasn't a very thoughtful one. It was a retaliation one. But because he's a Brahmana and he spoke it, it happened. Exactly as he said it. Okay. Good. Anybody else? Let's see what happens. Let's see.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the talk. My question is, Maharaj, sometimes we are just caught up in a moment and we don't have intention to disrespect somebody, but maybe because of the too much pressure or we are stressing out and we just blurted something.
Yeah.
But then later on, if we regret and apologize, will that count?
Yes. The person, yes. You not only does it count, it's proper. It's to be done. Now, circumstance may be that wound went in so deep in their heart that you're not going to get a positive response back. But the purpose of the apology is not to get squeaky clean again. The purpose is I've made a defense and it was not proper. There was circumstance, and I was whatever this pressure I was going through something. I shouldn't have spoken like that. I shouldn't have behaved like that, and I'm feeling regret. So I'm seeking, however you say it explicitly, but I'm seeking your kind forgiveness. Then the person can respond however they're going to respond. We're gonna come across a couple more of those going forward. Example from Mahabharata examples and things like that.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah,
Maharaj?
sure.
Sometimes we are at the receiving end. Somebody is disrespecting us again and again. It's very toxic environment sometimes. So how should we take that and be and still be respectful to them?
It depends on how elevated your consciousness is at that moment. I mean, there's a menu and you select from the menu. One of the, this is very similar to the father of Shravan Kumar. He reacted and then he became thoughtful. So, so what you're going to do, or any one of us is going to do, may depend upon how severe and the circumstance that we're passing through, and so forth and so on. But in a quieter moment, the Tattenu Kampam Susamikshamano verse is appropriate. This misfortune is coming to me because it's for my purification. It may be because I'm getting a slap on the wrist when I should have gotten a broken arm instead of a broken arm, because I'm deserving. It's just a very token reaction. So thank you, Krishna, for the token reaction, because I should have been blasted, and instead I was just insulted. So, or this is purification. It's Krishna's kindness for my purification. Krishna wants me to become more humble. So let me take that position for the satisfaction of Krishna. And having nothing, disconnecting with the circumstance and the drama and the events and what was said or done. And purification. Krishna, you're very kind. You're giving me an opportunity to take deeper shelter of you. Thank you. And that's an option. So we have a menu to select from, depending upon circumstance. The theme that I'm going to be saying through as I go forward with the rest of this presentation and other places, never depart from respect. Because that comes to me, to us, as an obstacle in my relationship, my loving relationship with Krishna, being disrespectful to someone else because they said or did or something. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for that wonderful presentation. My observation is Vaishnava culture is a culture not just of respect, and I'm not discounting what Kapil Dev and Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Jiva Goswami are saying, but it seems actually a more proactive, positive principle of appreciation.
Well, respect isn't neutral. It's also active.
Right. I find that appreciation acts like a good guide rail from potentially falling into the position of disrespect.
Yeah.
Like Karnamitra Prabhu was writing one time about this principle of envy and disrespect, and he said between individuals is commonly a situation where it's me and everyone else is an object for my pleasure. And that kind of creates a situation where one can start having disrespectful mentality because you're just looking at people as objects of something to make me happy.
Yes, who's at the center. So you want to carry on?
I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
As you were speaking, I was contemplating something that it went away. It'll come back. Anyone else? Huh? Online. Okay. You like passing the microphone. You got a big smile. Service to the Vaishnavas, right? That's right.
How does one forget the unintentional negative comments? Like you mentioned, we will not have peace, but there is no hate and no peace sometimes. How to handle that?
No hate and no
Peace.
peace.
That-
Peace, P-E-A-C-E.
Yes.
Do you
He-
understand the question?
No.
Okay. Go ahead. But they're not feeling peaceful either. Well, here's something I commonly recommend in that dilemma type of paradigm. Pause. And reflect. In the pause space, you'll disengage from, I'm in the movie, and you step back and contemplate. Not necessarily what just happened or what's going on, but more specifically, one's relationship with Krishna and what is an appropriate way in my relationship with Krishna to be responsive to whatever, that dynamic is, whatever this happened, but it's neither this nor that. And so what's an appropriate, is there something that's appropriate? And if you don't get an answer, it's okay, but keep asking the question, and then Krishna may give you an answer. What's appropriate to please him in this circumstance? It's neither this nor that. Pause. So, a Brahminical quality is introspection. So that's what I'm saying. Go into a Brahminical space and be introspective and turn to Krishna and say what needs to be said to Krishna. I want to be pleasing to you. I'm not sure at this moment what's going to be pleasing to you. Please give me some indication. That's a relationship with a loving relationship with Krishna. Then it may be not immediately, but maybe even in some cases, my experiences, a day later or a few days later, the light goes on and say, oh. And then you have another menu choice. Should I go to that person and say, what needs to be said, or do I just let it go, or next time, I have start to make some choices. In principle, one more time, in any case, never depart from respect. And I'm not clear. I'm not sure what my own feelings are. I'm not clear what's right and what's not right. But never let me not depart from respect. And then respect for what? And then that's a good blank to fill in. Ultimately, the supreme. And because things of this world are perverted reflections of what's of the spiritual realm. And let me not just be reactive to the perverted reflection that's of this realm and be mindful of what's in the spiritual realm. It's an opportunity for me to do like that. That's a higher consciousness position to take, but that's what our life is, life of devotion. Making those kinds of choices instead of the reactive kinds. And being sorry for what we said or did. And apologizing for it. Yeah.
When you were saying that about pause and reflect, I was reminded of a beautiful series of lectures you gave maybe 10 years ago about when the four Kumaras felt hurt by the gatekeepers from them not being allowed to enter into Vaikuntha, how the Lord himself, by his extreme demonstration of humility, brought them all to a place of humility themselves and understanding, a higher principle. So that was a very, I thought, wonderful seminar in how the Lord overcame this negative quality amongst the four Kumaras with his own expressed humility. And that seemed like a great way of dealing with situations where, you may feel hurt by what somebody said and quote unquote take the higher road. But in this case, it's Bhagwan himself seemingly taking the higher road and talking about how he would cut off his arm for this and that and take the dust of his devotees. And I think poor Kamaras realized what came out of anger was not for their own well benefit. And simultaneously he addressed the situation of Jai and Vijay. I just wanted to add that.
When it comes to a situation like this, or a situation where there are persons of higher consciousness, very clearly higher consciousness, then the yardsticks for measuring and understanding, hey, what's going on, don't apply anymore. And one has to be ready to be far more fluid. And, the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a super elaborate explanation of this whole Leela, of the cursing and the whole scene. It's layered of the goddess of fortune and giant Vijay praying and Lord Vishnu wanting, and the Kumaras being under the jurisdiction of the Lord's internal potency, and it's a very involved, it's not one layers of things going on. So in our spiritual lives, we're not so elevated, but there may be layers, and don't be so for some advice, don't be so quick to get a one straight line and that's it. It's likely not correct that that's it. That maybe that's correct, but there's other things going on that one has to consider, or a thoughtful person will consider. Okay, so you get the last one.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So there were several pretty heavy verses about respect, otherwise you're
Yeah. You're in the garbage can.
Exactly. And then there are other verses as well, like Apichet Suduracharo in the Bhagavad Gita, and in Upadeshamrit, the 6th verse, Drishtai Subhav Janitayir. And so it initially appears that, so I just want to ask if my understanding is correct, that it initially appears, of course, these are like, one should always respect, and if you're not, then this, but the other one is saying that even if you see very abominable behavior, even if they are worshipping the deities, that is the Bhajate Mam, Ananya Bhak, then still consider them to be a sadhu. It's more about, the first one is about applying it on ourselves.
Yeah.
And the second one is about not judging others.
Yes. Very good.
And therefore, actually, there both saying, in fact, the same thing, that you must respect others. Even the Apichet Sudarachar is saying, respect others even if you see faults in them.
Sudorachar.
Yeah. Even if you see very abominable faults in them, still offer all respects to them. And of course, very quickly they will be cleansed. And of course, it is also showing the power of bhakti, that how quickly bhakti will cleanse, Krishna's bhakti will cleanse. That's the right harmonization of this whole understanding.
Yeah, I'm confirming.
Thank you.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. For Premanandi. Oh. Those of you that want, you can join me for a class tomorrow morning at 4:30 a.m.
Remember, it's a culture of respect.